Guys, usually this is the part of the show where we go into the spoilerverse and discuss the latest episode of a TV show we're focusing on. But guys, it's the end of the year, and I don't know if you've noticed, there's fuck all good TV shows just left. Those Slow Horses did start on Apple TV, and I am looking forward to watching that over the Christmases. But there's no real shows left for us to cover, and this is the second last episode of the year. So what we're going to do is we're getting into year-end mode, and we're going to discuss 2023 on the box. We're going to talk through the top 10 TV shows of the year. And joining me to discuss 2023 as a whole is a man that I've spent pretty much the entirety of 2023 since he was last on the show, trying to find a reason to have him back on because I enjoy his contributions so much. But he is here now. We've got him to discuss all of the TV of the year. Ladies and gentlemen, it is the one, the only, from Fan Club, Kevin Keane. Kev, you're very welcome back to page 180. Great to have you back on again. And Kev, I guess the question I have for you is to get us kicked off. When we talk about 2023 and TV, next year might look a little bit different because the strike, I think, is going to start impacting, even though it's coming to an end. It'll delay a lot of projects. Was 2023 a good year for TV for you?
Well, first of all, hello. Thanks for having me back.
Hello.
It's really good to be here. 2023 was a year that surprised me, I think, with how good it was. There's a lot of shows that came out this year that I didn't really know anything about till maybe like a week, or even like when it had just been released and you kind of just took a chance on it.
Yeah.
And I do think 2023 was a strong year for season 2s and 3s of stuff.
Ooh,
I think.
Okay. Yeah,
or just like not necessarily like new shows, but like new seasons of shows. So yeah, I do think 2023 there was at least one thing per month, I think, that was top tier.
Yeah.
This year, especially considering we did an entire 10-part review of a particular show earlier in the year as well,
which I feel we're going to be discussing more of. I have a good feeling it might have made the list because we were quite high on it when we discussed. So I think that's a great description of the year. There was a lot of these on the list that I either hadn't watched before or I just caught up on. There's some things that didn't make the list that I caught up on and were pleasantly surprised. Like, for example, Yellow Jackets is something that I just had no idea about. And then it just kind of, the second season fell upon me and I'm just like, what is this? And how did I not hear about this? So there was a lot of those kind of projects, and then stuff that Netflix as well kind of just dropped a lot of bombs. And then and then everyone on your timeline is like, what's this show? And it turns out to be amazing. So I agree. It was a surprising year. And I think as well, another kind of way I define the year is the things you wanted to hit for the most part hit, and the things that you like were recommended tended to be good as well. You know what I mean? It was I don't know about quantity. I think last year was an insane year for television in terms of like the amount of shows. There just seemed to be 5 different amazing shows on at any stage, mainly due to COVID delays and so on, and they were just catching up. But I think this year there was less quantity, but the quality tended to be higher. We now obviously want to start talking about what shows we like. So let's get to it. Let's not fuck around and let's not waste any time. But first of all, we're just going to set the scene and some ground rules. This is about our top 10 TV shows of the year, but the phrase TV shows is deliberately vague. It doesn't all have to be genre-based nerd stuff that we tend to discuss on Into the Spoilerverse, or it doesn't have to be prestige TV dramas. You can have animated shows, comedies, documentaries, reality TV. If you want sports shows on this, that counts. It is a television show. You can stick Match of the Day in there if you like. If it can be described as a TV show, it counts here. We're not being too strict with the rules. The format will work like this because we are doing a list feature, but I do want to acknowledge that lists are inherently subjective and bollocks as well. If I come on here and turn around and say to you, these are conclusively the best TV shows of the year, the only thing I can do is upset you as a listener. But the subjectivity of it all and comparing notes side of things, that's quite fun, and that can lead to some interesting conversations, and you guys can have your own top 10 lists. Well, we may kind of add to that. So that's kind of the way it is. We're not saying these are the best shows. We've just both made our own top 10 lists, and these are our favorites. And we don't know what the others picked, by the way. We've kept it deliberately secret until now. Also, as well, worth noting is this is not our full-time job, so we haven't seen every show. So if you're like, I can't believe you didn't have that show, there's only so many hours we can fit into the day, and there's so many shows we like as well. So don't savage us if we haven't seen your favorite show, but do reach out and give us recommendations, because I got a lot of time now. Christmas is coming up. I'm going to be doing a lot of binging. I'm very happy to start getting stuck into what I missed. The way we'll work it though is we're going to go through our list. Kev's going to go first, and then I'm going to go. But we only want to have one conversation about the TV show. So if Kev says one and I have it higher in my list, or vice versa, we'll hold off discussing it until we get to the point of the person having it higher in their list. And then we'll do one big discussion then. In terms of spoilers, the goal of this is that if you haven't seen the show, we want to recommend it to you. We want you to go out of your way, and over your Christmas, maybe have something cool to binge. If you have seen it, we want to try and compass why you felt it was good. So we'll refer to episodes, moments, quotes, or plot points, but we're not going to outright spoil specific things that happened or go super in depth. So in theory, if you haven't seen the show, we're not going to be like, this person dies in episode 4. And if we do have to get a bit spoilery because we can't do the conversation, we will telegraph it as well. But again, this is a relatively safe space for spoilers. So before we get into our top 10 list, I don't know about you, Kev, I found this very difficult. When I set the project, I was like, okay, yeah, 10 TV shows, that'll be fine. And then I went down, and I'm not going to lie, I found 17 that I wanted to include in this list.
Wow.
So I do want to make some space for any honorable mentions you may have. And again, just kind of list them off for now, and I'll tell you if I've got any of them in my top 10, and we'll discuss it then. But if not, have at it. So first off, honorable mentions, things that you perhaps wanted to make your top 10, but just didn't make the cut when you did the final list.
Yeah. And this is like a technicality, I suppose, that it's in an honorable mention. But the first off is Invincible for me, because it's only 4 episodes so far.
Yeah. Agreed.
It has to be put in there, but we were only 4 in, and I can't comment on the entire season. I think it's going to be amazing, but it's just an honorable mention now for me, and it's only that reason as well.
Great.
But it's been amazing so far. I've absolutely loved Invincible so far, and I've loved season 1. J.K. Simmons or Omni-Man's obviously been racing in Mortal Kombat 1 like 2 weeks ago, I think it was, at this stage, and he's incredible to play as well. But it's just kind of getting my hype up more for the show now as well.
Fair.
But yeah, it's interesting where they're taking the story now with Invincible too, and it's just such a well-written show. I keep recommending it to people, and it's hard, I think, getting past the first episode in season 1, because it's very much a generic kind of, it looks like a kid show basically till the last 5 minutes, and then shit hits the fan, and you kind of, okay, this is what the show is.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's my first honorable mention.
I the exact same, and literally I did it for selfish reasons, more so because I'm like, this makes my top 10 easier, because I don't know what to do with this. So I'm like, I'm gonna make my life easier, just not include it. So yeah, no, good call.
Yeah. So do you want me to just keep on going?
Yeah, go for it. Call out whatever your honorable mentions are. Go for
it. Scott Pilgrim's another one.
Yeah.
I adore that movie. And when I saw the whole cast were returning, the show kind of threw me for a loop for where it went. And just because I was just kind of expecting a very much 8-episode retelling of the story, but maybe with more detail. And they completely flipped it on its head for what it was, and it was refreshing to kind of see these characters back in just in different situations and a different what's the word I'm looking for? Yeah, just kind of different interactions with each other as well. Like people that might not have interacted in the movie get to interact more now. And I thought it was a really well told story about just kind of growing up a bit, which I don't think the movie really nailed at the end. Like, you don't really feel like at the end of the movie, Scott's not exactly, I don't feel like he's learned his lesson that much.
Yeah, agreed.
He kind of gets away with a lot of shit in that. So yeah, I think the show was a much more mature way of telling the story, I think, as well. And it was good getting it from the perspective of why is my mind gone blank? from Ramona,
other characters,
from Ramona, and then from the exes then as well, and kind of getting to know the exes a bit more too.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's honorable mention number 2 for me. I don't know if it's in your list at all. But
I had it as an honorable mention as well. No,
yeah,
100%. Yeah, agreed. I discussed it there last week as well. So if you want to go back, check out my review. It's up there, work away. But yeah, I felt the same. I loved it. Do you know what? The only reason I think it didn't make the top 10 is because it's so recent. And I think I'm still processing it. I think if it was 6 months ago and I thought about it for the past 6 months, it may have cracked the top 10, but I'm still it's still fresh to me. You know what I mean? So yeah, I had it as an honorable mention.
Yeah, interesting. We're getting the same honorable mentions. Third one is Shrinking on Apple TV.
Ooh, no, I don't have it anywhere. I haven't watched it.
Shrinking is very, very good. It's Harrison Ford in that show. He looks like he's just having fun doing kind of a comedy show. Like it's a comedy drama show with Harrison Ford and Jason. Oh my god, why am I mind going blank? Jason Segel in it as well. And they're therapists, and it's a nice, it's kind of like a Ted Lasso kind of vibe of it. It's a nice show. It's got its dramatic moments, but for the most part, it's a kind of a nice feel good kind of show that I would recommend if you've not seen it. If you're a fan of Ted Lasso, I would recommend Shrinking a lot. And I think it's getting a season 2 now as well. I hope it does anyway. But yeah, that's my last honorable mention. I had 13. I think I watched more movies and TV shows this year.
Okay, interesting. I'm a loser. I watch like so many. Like this is what I do. So like I'm like I've a freakish amount, and these are just the ones that are the honorable mentions. This isn't even everything I watched. Invincible, we already discussed. Black Mirror as well, which I always love a Black Mirror season. It wasn't the strongest season, but I still love it. Like the worst Black Mirror episode is better than most normal TV episodes. So again, this wasn't the strongest season, but again, a lot of the concepts stuck with me, particularly the Aaron Paul episode. Really, really liked it. And Jane Hates You as well. Already kind of something that in that typical or Everybody Hates Jane, I think it is the one where it's essentially they make a document, they make a live action TV show on her life. It's something that in that really mad Black Mirror way, as so often has happened, they release an episode, and then a couple of months later, it's being talked about that Netflix actually do want to do that with the writer's strike, use AI, so personalized catered TV shows about its viewers. So like, yeah, scary and very prescient. I have Hijack on Apple TV, a really, really fun watch that snuck up on me. Very, very good. It was essentially just a vehicle for Idris Elba on TV, which he hasn't had that many TV hits when you think about it. Tends to be more of a movie guy. But
this is always on the plane, is it?
Yes, and just gripping. It just like it's a very simple concept, and they just do it really well. I loved it, but again, when you think of kind of the ones that I have, just gave me a bit more joy on the top 10 list. Silo, another Apple TV project, is also in there. The first season released this month. It was essentially based on a bunch of short stories, and they just kind of stretched it out into a TV show. Very intriguing. I love those kind of, like, Lost is one of my favorite TV shows ever, and any show that kind of encourages theory crafting and the likes, and this does very well. It starts with a bottle episode, which essentially doesn't kind of, it sets the scene for the world, but the characters you fall in love with aren't the characters you spend the show with, which kind of reminds me of a show I know about, like Mythic Quest. Do you know where they have like the one episode in the series that decides to be the best episode on television, and then they get back to having like it reminded me of that, where it's like, this is just an incredible episode of television. But they managed to kind of keep it, even when they got to the actual story, they managed to keep it exciting and fun. The Bad Batch season 2, it's not the last Star Wars property that I will discuss on this list. You can probably guess what it is if you follow the show that I will discuss. But the Bad Batch season 2, I loved it. I think you're missing a trick if you aren't following the animated Star Wars stuff. It's doing a lot of good, and it's the only kind of project at the moment that's kind of fitting in the era of the timeline that it is. It's filling in the blanks immediately after the prequel trilogy. So not close to the sequel trilogy. It's kind of and not even close to the likes of Andor. So it's a blank slate of period in the Star Wars universe. They did so well this year to kind of build up the characters, because the first season was good, but you're still getting used to the characters, and it's not the characters we know from the animated properties, and kind of just adjusting to them and adapting. And we know them now, we love them, and they really did a lot of good work. And of course, there's a lot of episodes because it's animated. Scott Pilgrim Takes Off, we already discussed. Poker Face was one that I really, really loved. Essentially a mystery of the week, really old school type show, almost Columbo / Murder She Wrote, like Natasha Lyonne, who people will know from American Pie or Orange is the New Black, essentially gets her own show. And I don't feel like any of us were expecting that, because she was kind of an extra character, more a character actor who was kind of a background noise for other shows. But she like, we all love her. Anyone who watches loves her. Her kind of playing a Columbo person who goes around solving mysteries and murders and stuff like that. Really, really fun, really creative. And because as well, they were kind of doing just individual separate episodes. You do have to watch them in the order because there is like kind of a running thread. But the episodes themselves are individual. And if you watched it once, you can go back and kind of cherry pick episodes that you liked, but they get amazing guest stars in there. You have the likes of Joseph Gordon-Levitt, you have Benjamin Bratt, Simon Helberg, Adrian Brody. There's just a murderer's row of cast there because they're only coming in for one episode, so it's schedule friendly. The last one is one that I was determined to fit on here, but I just couldn't, and it breaks my heart. Abbott Elementary season 2, absolutely love it. And in a world where I'm a big proponent of saving comedy and like keeping good comedy on the air. There are a lot there, and we're losing a lot of kind of genuinely funny comedies now at the moment. Quinta Brunson has come along with this story. If you've never seen Abbott Elementary, it's essentially just a kind of Modern Family style mockumentary comedy based around a school with like Black children and teachers and everything, set in Philadelphia. And it tells like the social side of it, like as well. Like it does tell a really good social story, and there is like emotional beats there, but it is just a fucking funny show. So if you're looking for a good comedy over Christmas, you cannot go wrong with Abbott Elementary. I was devastated I couldn't get it into my top 10, but I do have a comedy in there that I liked better, so that was what ultimately won it. So they are my honorable mentions. Time for us to get into the meat and potatoes. Again, what we're going to do is, Kev, I'll just ask you to name the number 10 on your list, and I will tell you if it is on my list or not on my list. And if it's not, we'll have a chat about it. If it is, we'll wait until it kind of gets higher on the list. So, Kev, in at number 10 for you. Hit me with it. I don't know what this is. I'm so excited.
My number 10 is Ted Lasso.
Ooh, okay. 3. Okay, it's not on my list.
Yeah, I know. And I do you know what? It was just because I was nearly struggling to make this list. I was like, fuck, did I watch this much TV over the year? But Ted Lasso is up there. And I know it was like the weaker season, I think, of all the 3 seasons. But I think from what was good in it was great in it. And I think it finished off the story for the most part in a really kind of quite a satisfying way for most of the characters too. I loved Jamie and Roy's relationship in it. I thought their bromance essentially that kind of happened was great. And yeah, it's a comfort show for me. And when it was on, I can't remember if I was just feeling kind of particularly maybe downer in that time of the year, but it was just a saving grace every week of having that to look forward to.
Nice.
Because it's just a lovely, nice show to watch, man. And it's just, it's just feel good, man.
Okay. I don't disagree. And kind of, I remember I discussed it with Tom Pott when the season ended, and we weren't big on the show, either of us, but at the same time, I didn't feel that while I was watching it. I get what you're saying. Every episode had its funny moments, and every episode kind of enjoyed it. But I guess the one thing that kind of held back for Ted Lasso for me, and I don't want to say that I disagree with this pick. It's fine, because it was enjoyable. Like, I think back to moments like Jamie trying to teach Roy how to ride a bike, and that was fucking hilarious. There was
phenomenal.
there were some great moments and great episodes, but it was kind of like I just had higher expectations for Ted Lasso, that it's kind of half comedy, half almost a prestige TV show, because it kind of sold Apple TV at the start.
Yeah.
And this just felt like more of an incidental comedy season. And again, if this was season 1, I'd probably be a much bigger fan, but I just know how good and intricate the storytelling could be. Like, even when you look at season 2 and the twist, but how well that twist had been kind of telegraphed subtly throughout the series, and how much it devastated and hit us. That's what the show is capable of, and it felt short of that. So I think I speak more to my disappointment of it when I say that season 3 just didn't hit the mark for me. But on a week-to-week basis, I really enjoyed watching it. And I know a lot of people who, by the time season 3 had rolled around, were big fans and watched it every week. And we came into work or we're in group chats or whatever, and we discussed it fondly. You know what I mean? We enjoyed it. But again, when you kind of step back to evaluate it, I think it was when me and Tom were chatting, we're like, I didn't realize, both of us were like, I didn't realize I didn't like this show that much. Only when we tried to almost discuss it and evaluate it, that it's like, oh yeah, they kind of fucked this one. But again,
I think it was rushed. That is the main problem of that last season. I think they knew where they wanted to get to, and they only had a certain amount of time to do it. And I kind of felt like some of the redemption arcs might have been a bit rushed.
Yeah, but like, it felt contractual. Like, it felt like we'll only have this season of actors for this. You know what I mean? Yeah. Whereas they probably could have done it if they're at the pace of the other seasons. They probably would have taken 2 or 3 seasons to get what they got in. You know what I mean? So yeah, I do. I agree with that. But again, not bad.
Yeah, I think I any time I get to spend with those characters, I love. You know?
I agree. Not a bad choice. In at number 10 is what for me is one that I feel that you may have on your list, because I know this is something that we both absolutely love. I have It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, season 16.
It is on my list as well, but it's further up.
Okay, fair enough. We will hold our fire then, okay? So we'll hold on. I knew that was going to be on your list, you know what I mean? And I debated putting it higher, but and I feel like after I talk about it, I will like it. Something we haven't actually got to discuss. We were talking about discussing it earlier in the year, but then it kind of was really rushed, and it came out during the actor strike, so they didn't really announce it or promote it when it was released over here. So we didn't really get a chance to. So I'm looking forward to discuss that. So we'll move on then to your number 9. What have you got?
My number 9 is a recent one. It's quite a recent one, but I enjoyed because it's a very contrived show. Bodies on Netflix. Okay,
I haven't seen this, so recommend it to me. This might be something that I watch, because I know a few people who have seen it.
It's so the premise of this show is it takes place in 4 different timelines. There's like the 1890, there's one in around 1941, there's one in present day, and then there's one in the future then as well. And basically what happens, it's 4 detectives in these 4 different time periods. They find the same body with the same mark, with the same wound on them. And it's them figuring out how is everything here connected, basically. It's some of it is there's plot holes in this thing to bits, man, but sometimes you just have to roll with some of the bullshit. But yeah, because it reminded me, it's an absolutely brilliant cast of mostly unknowns, bar Stephen Graham, who's in it as well. He's just excellent in nearly everything that he's in my opinion. But most of it's just unknowns. But it's a British and Irish cast for the most part in it too. I think it's very well acted. It's just a bit different, and it's one of those shows that I was discussing this yesterday as well. It's one of those shows that I kind of feel it takes a swing. It doesn't necessarily hit on everything, but it's different enough to be like, well, at least you tried something a bit different there, and you went just kind of all out with it. Now, it is based on a graphic novel, and I know the graphic novel is very different to how the show actually is. But they've taken a lot of liberties in it. But I think it's definitely worth a watch, in my opinion, now as well, just because of how strange and weird it is.
Okay, multiple timelines. I like shows to take a swing and take a risk, and some of it doesn't work. I'm into those shows. I like the risky ones. So,
and a solid murder mystery, like, as well. So yeah,
you may have sold it to me. You may have sold it to me. Similarly, my number 9 is something where it's not a murder mystery, because they take the mystery element out of it in episode 1. It's a Netflix show though, and there is murder involved. Maybe something you have as well. I have a feeling.
I feel like I know what it is.
The Fall of the House of Usher.
That's way up higher on my list, man.
Okay,
I
okay,
adore that
okay.
show.
Exciting. We're 2 for 2 now. Okay, interesting. Right. Okay, so we have two more to have really meaty discussions around. So we'll move back
Yeah.
on to your number 8.
My number 8, you actually mentioned it in your honorable mentions, was Black Mirror.
Okay.
I love anything in the Black Mirror universe, like you said earlier as well. Even if it's bad, it's usually better than a lot of stuff that's on TV.
Mm-hmm.
I loved, the Everybody Hates Jane was such a weird episode as well. It was very meta kind of episode as well. I loved that. I loved the AI commentary that was on that as well. That was brilliant. But what I really loved in that season, bar the Aaron Paul episode being great, was the Red Mirror one at the end of it, the more horror style episode.
Yes.
I absolutely adored that, and I think the setting of it in like the 1970s England, they nailed the aesthetic of everything, and I love. It was just such a throwback to those kind of 70s kind of weird as fucks horror movies though as well. And they kind of followed through with just the ending of it as well. They kind of followed through with what they kind of promised as the ending of that. So I don't want to give away any spoilers if you've not seen it, but fair. Black Mirror, man, it's every like, I know the season before that wasn't amazing with the what was it, the Miley Cyrus episode and the Topher Grace one as well. But I thought this was a great return to form for Black Mirror. And it's always brilliant seeing actors like Aaron Paul. And then they got like Selma Hayek and stuff as well in the first episode too. Just these big actors coming in and having fun with the material that they're kind of given as well. So yeah, Black Mirror is up in my number 7 pick.
Number 8. I'm right in saying that, yeah.
No, number 7. Oh, sorry, number 8. Number 8. You're
okay. I'm like, okay, this one. Okay, good stuff. Demon 79 is the last episode. I loved it. I want to, before people start shouting at us, I want to correct us. This was on me. It was Joan is awful. Not everyone hates Jane. Sorry, whoever you are, Jane.
Shoot.
It's Joan.
Joan. Yeah.
Lock Henry as well. Was a really good Scottish mystery one with what's his name out of Game of Thrones in it.
Pod.
Yes, Pod. Brilliant. And such a different role as well. Absolutely loved it. Yeah, Black Mirror it's great. And you know what? I actually, unpopular opinion here, I liked the Miley Cyrus episode. I thought she was really, really good. I like seeing her acting, and I liked the fact that you're like, there was an authenticity to her episode. I know it's not this season, but from the last one, there was an authenticity to her episode that I'm like, there's obviously a lot of it isn't true to life. It's a Black Mirror episode, but there are elements of it that you could tell she pulled from her real life to make it work. So while the concept itself might have been a bit too ambitious and a bit of a reach, I thought she made it credible and authentic, and I really enjoyed her performance in it. So, but like we said, even a bad Black Mirror episode, usually better than a lot of good ones. In a number 8, I think we haven't discussed this ever, and I feel like we would have. So I feel this isn't something you've watched. I'm going to deviate a little bit from scripted TV shows. I'm going to go to some reality TV. And in my number 8 is the reboot of Big Brother. I don't think we discussed this, so I'm gonna assume you didn't watch it.
I've been listening to you doing it, Dave.
Okay.
Discussing it in the podcast though.
Okay. I am a total old school Big Brother fanboy. It was like appointment viewing for me the first 7 or 8 years of its run until Davina left, basically. And I even went for it at one stage. I know it was a terrible audition. I got nowhere, but I just wasted a day in a queue, basically. But I think spending COVID watching old clips on TikTok left myself and others really thirsty for another run. And I'm so happy that ITV delivered in the reboot. The cast they found were spot on. They were the perfect blend of like entertaining enough to be on TV and make good television without being too attention seeking or fame hungry or try hard, which ruined a lot of the later series as people were getting on just for exposure or whatever. It was really super diverse as well, which kind of reflected today's world, but also left enough difference to kind of surprise you with friendships that happened, or also just create conflict, which made for great TV. It was the perfect length at 6 weeks. It never outstayed its welcome, and every night it felt like they had a brand new way to kind of twist and turn the housemates in such a way that you and like the people I discussed it with found themselves constantly changing who we liked. Constantly, our power rankings were going up and down and going mental, which is what you want. My only concerns were minor nitpicks. Like I didn't like the voting system, which I felt could and can't still be manipulated and prejudiced like by bad face operators. I think the early departures of trans candidate Hallie and Trish, who like spoke about race quite a lot as well, and touched a few nerves, I think, showed as much. And keep in mind that was before Trish's old school social media post resurfaced. Plus, early on, it took me a good while to warm up to kind of Will Best and AJ Adodu as the host, but they actually won me over by the end. And I even found myself watching the Leighton Live complimentary show that they host every night. What I love most, though, was the conversations that started. Twitter, I'm not calling it X, is a dumpster fire these days, and none of the proposed replacements like Blue Sky I'm on, like I have like 2 followers, it's tragic, but no, because no one's on it yet. Threads we don't have over here, and apparently it's not that great anyway. So there's nothing really, there's a void there, but it actually became fun to use Twitter and tweet every night during it again, and constantly texting and voice messaging my friends about the latest developments. I'm delighted it's back, and I cannot wait for Celebrity Big Brother this year. So that's my number 8 Big Brother. I absolutely loved it. We'll move on to your number 7 now.
My number 7 is a comedy show, but it's not Sunny though as well.
Okay.
I Think You Should Leave with Tim Robinson, season 3.
Okay,
I don't know if you've
haven't
ever
seen
that show.
No.
Oh man, I highly recommend this show. It's very alternative sketch comedy. Season he used to be he was on SNL, I think, around the time 2010ish when like Sudeikis and Bill Hader and all them were on SNL. And he was only on it for a season or 2 and they let him go, and like their loss is our win here, because like he was offered his own like Netflix show just to do for sketches, and season 1 took off so well. He's up on season 3 now as well. But the best thing about this show is it's the sketches are brilliant, but in social media now as well, and TikTok and any like Instagram reels, there's something from this show. It's just become so memed. It's really kind of broke through from the show and into like proper pop culture and meme culture as well. And I think if you're into sketch comedy in general, I think you should like it, but especially weird alternative sketch comedy, I'd highly recommend it. And they're only about like 15 to 18 minutes long per episode. They're not like crazy long episodes, so you can kind of just get a feel of what if you like it or not then as well. I think after an episode or 2, and if you don't like it, you haven't wasted that much time, I suppose. But I absolutely adore this show. Nice. And I would highly recommend, man.
Yeah, it's on my list. It's been on my list for a while, but it's just getting around to it. But yeah, you're selling me well. 15-minute episodes as well. I love low committal comedy shows where I can just throw on the background while I'm having dinner, you know what I mean, and so on. Just fill up the little gaps in the day. So yeah, I think I'm going to check that out. I think I'm going to give that a go over Christmas. Big. I'm into a lot of
now,
what you said.
It's weird as shit, by the way.
I love weird. I love weirdness. Give me all the weirdness in the world. Love it.
Yeah, like they've a sketch on it where it's like The Bachelor, but he's just obsessed. He's a contestant that's obsessed with just the zip line. Okay. Part that's in the house, and that's all he does, and he's getting called out on it, and it's just fucking brilliant.
okay, interesting. Right, I'm very intrigued. I think you should leave. I'm gonna check that out. Yeah. In my number 7, I think this may surprise people who listen to the show that this is this low. What I want to clarify is this isn't low because I think any less of it. I love every show on this list. I just adored the ones that are ahead of it. And it's one I know you watch, so it may be on your list. I'm not 100% sure. I have Ahsoka in at number 7.
Ahsoka is in my list as well. It's a bit higher though.
Okay, intriguing. That's mad. Yeah. Like I'm the like Ahsoka and Rebels obsessive, and you have a higher in your list. I don't know.
Yeah,
that's a bit of a twist, but I like it. Okay, fair enough. We will discuss shortly after we discuss your number 7.
Number 7, so Sunny season 16.
Yes, let's do this.
Yeah, what a return to form again from the last seasons too. Like they were dipping a little bit, and it kind of, do you ever like be watching a comedy show and you know it's funny but you're not laughing out loud?
Yeah,
season 16 it is made me proper laugh out loud again.
Yes.
I absolutely adore, like, it's like the first episode when Max doesn't realize he's allergic to nuts for the entire episode is just gold to me. It's peak Sunny for me.
Yes.
Yeah, some of the topics that, like, just inflation being one of the topics, was just such a great kind of introduction to the new season as well. Everybody just feels like they're back on form again too. The writing is just on point. And they're even taking stories, I think, that were like, they're fairly because, like, I listen to the Stunny podcast as well, and I suppose their writing process is quick enough in their filming process too that they can kind of touch on stories that are not that old yet as well.
Yeah.
Like the Frank versus Russia episode was based on a real life thing that only happened like a couple of months ago in a chess championship.
Yeah.
Which is one of my favorite episodes as well. With the new Dennis system as well, the Sin system too. It's
so good.
And then what was the episode as well? The where it's like it's risky. Is it Risky Rats?
Risky Rats, yes.
Risky Rats, phenomenal episode too.
Loved it.
And then just Dennis takes a mental health day is like, we're in our mid-30s. It's so relatable.
Yes. I'm not messing, right? So our mutual friend, other Kev, Ballymun Bruiser, who we covered obviously The Last of Us with earlier in the year. I texted him after watching that, and I'm like, tell me you've watched. And he goes, yes, and I'm aware that that's me. I'm like, because it is, and I'm not messing with you, right? We went to Wembley, okay, and we're in the airport. We're going to the AEW show in Wembley, and we're in the airport in the morning, and he comes back from the bar, and he's like, you have to get a fucking app to download this and to get this and get this. I'm like, Dennis takes a mental health day. He goes, fuck. I've seen it happen. It is literally him. But yeah, incredible stuff.
Yeah. My one thing about the season is the order of the episodes. I don't think I would have finished the season on that one.
Okay.
I think I would have finished on something more fun, like the bowling episode, maybe.
Right.
But that's the only kind of real nitpick I think I have with that season. For me, every episode in it was pretty much gold.
Yeah, they nailed it. They absolutely destroyed it. We're obviously huge Sunny fans. One of the highlights of my year was getting to attend Always Sunny podcast in Tree Arena, which you were there the same night as well, obviously. Return to form was the exact words I used to this as well. It was, I put this up there with any of the best series in like 18 years now. They've been doing this, and this is up there with any of the best series. Every episode knocked it out of the park. The Bryan Cranston episode, Frank shoots every member of the gang as well. Just kill me. Just leave me here for the rats to eat or some kids to find. It'd be disgusting.
And it just pans out. You think they're alone on the beach, and it pans out and it's packed. Incredible stuff. And like you said, it wasn't the Sunny was necessarily going downhill. They just ran for 15 seasons, and eventually you have to run out of jokes and content. And but I think everyone involved is so funny and gets what makes the show work at such a fundamental level that, similar to Black Mirror, even the worst episodes are still going to give you a few laughs. But like you say, there's a difference between going and the belly laughs that the best episodes give you. But it felt like kind of the days of the killer episodes that we used to get, like The Night McCometh and all the classics that we think of. Mac and Dennis living together as well, like all of them. It felt like you'd have to rewatch them and we wouldn't be getting any new more. But I think them having the podcast and kind of recording episodes while they were writing and in production for this season and looking back on the Hall of Fame episodes, I think that really helps them find that edge again, because I think it brought them back to their mindset, and you could feel that because it felt like they not only kind of brought back classic characters and kind of running gags from older seasons that they had talked about in the show. It felt like they got their mojo back, and this was classic Sunny. It wasn't afraid, because I think part of what this has been, and again, this year I'm rejoicing because we're getting so many good comedy shows, and we're getting kind of a return to kind of the unsafe comedy movies that we haven't gotten a few years. Because I think
comedians and comedy writers are afraid now with so many changes in the culture, and you can't say this and you can't say that, and they're afraid of what they can and can't do. So they're maybe erring on the side of caution. And I think Sunny suffered from that a little bit. Like, you could hear them even they had full episodes where they're like, no, you can't say this. Instead, you have to say that. And it kind of felt like they were a bit. And what made Sunny so, like, the first episode, first time we meet these characters, they're being blatantly racist. Like, and it's like, oh my God, this show says the quiet part loud. And like, again, doesn't say that it's right, but shows how disgusting these people are. And that's the point of it. They let our characters be so scumbags again. Like the Five Nights at Freddy episode we discussed, like they injure a lot of children in that episode. But it also felt like they just took the safety wheels off and weren't trying to pander their humor at all or keep it acceptable or avoid controversy. They just went for it. And that's why we're here and we love the show. Dennis Takes a Mental Health Day. For me, I got why that was the last episode, because these days with the newer series, they like to finish on a flourish. Like if you think of the finale where they had Mac dancing, where like they referred to that again in this series, where it's like, no, I get the Frank was like, I get the gay thing. Matt did the dance, I get the gay thing now. Brilliant. But like they finish on those set piece episodes. So I kind of got why that was. But for me, this was like just a mic drop. This was like, this is an all-timer episode. This is one of the best in there, maybe among my top 10 favorite Sunny episodes of all time. And it is just fantastic and so fucking good to have Sunny back at its peak. Again, 18 years and 16 seasons in. And now I'm just like, yeah, we're back. Season 17, give me all of it. Yeah. I'm very, very happy. So yeah, always Sunny, incredible.
You're dead right as well about, I think, the podcast reigniting their love. They also brought back older writers as well, though, from like the peak kind of season 7, 8, 9 seasons as well.
Yeah.
So they brought back their old writers again. And then you get like with Dennis Takes a Mental Health Day, that's actually an episode of the podcast where that happened to him in real life, where he got locked out of his car. Like, and it's clearly based on that. Like,
yeah. Because they're writing it while they're doing the podcast. So like, I fully believe that we're going to get an episode where Mac tries getting a fight with someone in a parking space. You know what I mean? Because that was an episode of the podcast as well. So I'm like, okay, they're doing it. And I'm like, this is great. This is amazing stuff. Delighted to have Sunny back. Great shout in at your number 6. My number 6, it's another Netflix show. Netflix doing quite well this year. You might have it on yours. Beef.
No, that's not on my list.
Oh, have you seen it? Oh my God. Treat yourself. It is brilliant. It's from A24, who, again, like all the mental movies, like if you're talking Everything Everywhere All at Once is the big one of the past couple of years, obviously won the Oscar last year. But again, like Dream Scenario, Nicolas Cage, the recent one about everyone dreaming about him. Beau is Afraid, Joaquin Phoenix won this year, which is insane.
The Talk to Me was A24 as well.
Talk to Me was A24. Yeah. A24, they're just knocking it out of the park for weird alt content, and it's fantastic. This is Stephen Yeun and Ali Wong. Basically, it starts with the two of them having a road rage incident, and it just like they just become rivals, and they just start taking their shit out on each other, and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. It was like you said at the start, it was one of those where it just showed up on my Netflix one day and someone's like, watch Beef, it's amazing. And then I did, and it was like, holy fucking crap. It was incredible. It's like a tidal wave getting caught in it by surprise. It just grabs you and doesn't put it down until it's finished with you. Stephen Yeun continued to show he's an absolutely limitless actor in the lead as Danny, and he's always kind of one slide away from a complete rage-induced breakdown. There's a bit of Dennis Reynolds to him in that sense as well. Like he has that where he could just go insane and murder everyone at any second, while his chemistry with Ali Wong is absolutely crackling throughout from the moment they meet in the series opening. It manages to kind of be hilarious while also being profound, and in true A24 fashion, it kind of tells a really meaningful, hard-hitting and relatable story, but in the most mental way about kind of the dangers of unchecked mental health issues. And it's just so bonkers and imaginative throughout. The last 2 episodes, though, are next level. For a show that's currently permanent, it is permanently dialed up to 11, literally from the cold open. It escalates things to 12 for the penultimate penultimate episode. As the stakes get like farcical, you're like, how has this gotten here? This is insanity. But it's just the nature of the show. And by that stage, you're just bought in that you just go with it and let them take you on their trail ride. But then you do that episode and you're like, what do they have left? And then they take a gigantic swing with the finale and essentially do a bottle episode that essentially steps away from the storylines that has spent the entire series building up and just builds like it focuses solely on the relationship of our two main characters, their needs and their motivations, and what essentially amounted to kind of a wild fever dream. It reminded me a lot of some of the weirder elements of Everything Everywhere All at Once in just an episode of television. It was amazing. It was gutsy and it totally paid off. And in a year where the Netflix brand has taken a bit of a battering for kind of producing, well, like not just this year, but like in recent years, kind of producing quantity over quality. This was a much needed win and a throwback to a time when Netflix was on the cutting edge of creating fresh, thought-provoking projects to set it apart from traditional TV. Do you remember those days when Netflix would make something and it's like, oh, this isn't the same. This is different. Streaming is actually the future. And we've got away from that a bit, but this reminded me of that, and it was really, really good. Beef, I cannot recommend it enough. That's my number 6.
I will get started on that tonight. That's a
Trust me.
very glowing recommendation.
And it's the type of one, it's only like, I think it's like 10 episodes, but it's like 30, 35-minute episodes as well. But it's like a drama. It's not a full comedy. It's very, very funny, but it's 30, 35 minutes. It's so disciplined and just cuts the fat and just really draws you in. It's the type of show you could watch it in like 1 or 2 sittings because it's that like addictive. You'll just keep going, next episode, next episode, next episode. It's really fucking good. That's my number 6. In at your number 5.
My number 5 is Ahsoka.
Ahsoka. Okay, go for it. I'm obviously a big Ahsoka fan. I was big into Rebels. We covered it here on the show. People have heard a lot from me on it. One thing I constantly was checking in on throughout our discussions, though, was, is this hitting for people who haven't watched Rebels? And I know from us discussing it like privately throughout the series, you hadn't watched Rebels. So I find it really interesting, and it makes me really happy that you have it higher on your list than I did as the big Rebels fan who loved this show also. So talk to me about that experience of having not watched anything. Did it make sense to you? Like what talk to me about all of that.
I thought they did a really good job of kind of establishing kind of what was going on, the dynamic in the team. And I think not because like this is like looking back on it like retroactively now as well with the with the mystery of Ezra then as well. Like I didn't know anything about him. So when it finally does get to him and they kind of show off what he can actually do then as well. I thought that was a great payoff for me because I wasn't aware of what happened to him really in the story, and I thought that was a really intriguing thing that kind of made me keep wanting to come back. I thought Thrawn as well didn't know anything about him either, and I thought his presence, and was it Mads Mikkelsen as well, wasn't it, that plays him?
Lars Mikkelsen, his brother.
No, so Lars, sorry. I thought he was great. Very, very commanding presence on the screen, very intimidating. I loved his gold commander guard as well, this fucking sick gladiator face.
I remember. Yeah, I know who you're talking about. Yeah.
I think it begins with E.
Yeah.
But I thought like the aesthetics of the show and seeing some of the stills then from the animated show and how they brought it to real life, because I know Ahsoka shows up in The Mandalorian as well. And even at that as well in The Mandalorian, didn't know who Thrawn was when she's like, where's Grand Admiral Thrawn in The Mandalorian? Didn't know anything about him as well. So like seeing that one episode of The Mandalorian paying off for this now as well, I thought was great.
Okay.
I loved all the characters. I also loved hearing week to week you and Jerry discuss it as well, because you're like two little kids like, just absolutely geeking out and being so excited that there's this animated show that you adore and they're doing it justice as well. And yeah, that was actually, to be fair, as well, like maybe that's why it's up higher on my list, is listening to you guys discuss it every week. I think was great too. Yeah. So that's my opinions on it. And plus, I love being in the Star Wars universe. When they're doing it properly, they're doing it right, when the writing's good. And Dave Filoni is just a genius at what he does.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I know there was it is, I think you said in the podcast as well, that this is essentially season 5 of Rebels. But it's done is make me kind of want to go back and actually look at Rebels now.
That was my question.
It's done its job.
Do you think that that's something that you will go and do, or do you think that like if you didn't do it, you'd be like, no, I'll just watch season 2. I get it. I'm caught up. I know all the main beats. Like I've kind of, you've listened to our show or maybe done a bit of your own research and you're kind of like, I'm good. Do you think that it is something that you'll actually go back and watch it? Because that was my big thing. Because it does add a lot. Like,
it's a Christmas thing for me. I think Star Wars is very Christmassy for me. So I think over the Christmas break, I'll probably end up at least starting it anyway.
Okay.
And knowing me, get completely addicted to it, and it'll take over my life. So
yeah. Text me how you're getting on. I want to check in. I want to know how that's going for you. Amazing. Really interesting to hear. And that makes me so happy hearing all of that as well. Obviously, look, I came to this with an almost unhealthy level of hope and expectation, given that it seemed to set itself up as the sequel to Rebels, which again is one of my all-time favorite pieces of Star Wars IP, and made me a true Dave Filoni believer and fanboy. But also, I wanted this to be good and I needed it to be good because it was coming off the back of a few projects that made Filoni and Jon Favreau seem a bit mortal. Like the new Mandalorian series doesn't even come close to this list. I didn't even consider it. As well as the book of
that was this year as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, and that's the thing. It
wasn't even in an honorable mention for me. Fuck.
Nothing. Didn't even think about it. I thought about it, and I'm like, I've no willingness. It's nowhere near these TV shows, even the honorable mentions. Which is a shame, because it was one of the shows we covered throughout the year. All I wanted with this, though, was just literally what I said was, all I want is a live action sequel that gave me answers to the questions that Rebels left open. That was exactly what I got, so I was happy. Was it perfect? No. You could nitpick aspects of it to death, and unfortunately, I think what knocked it down on the list a little bit for me, again, wasn't even to do with the show, but it was because you could nitpick aspects. It set off some of the more toxic elements of the Star Wars fandom, which really hampers my overall enjoyment of Star Wars sometimes. And in hindsight, though, the only thing I'm kind of disappointed about now, the only thing that actually bothers me about it and that I don't love, was they didn't have Zeb in it, who was the guy who appeared in The Mandalorian as a CGI Lasat. So you'll get to know Zeb, trust me, because they can't do season 2 without him. And they did mention him throughout. And season 2 as well now is going to happen. Now Filoni has been named Chief Content Officer at Lucasfilm. I know that's not official, but this is his baby. It's going to happen.
Shout out as well to Ray Stevenson though as well in the show.
Yes, Ray Stevenson absolutely bossed to hear, and like overall, like, and I really look back on this series and smile when I think about it. From watching the first 2 episodes in the Lighthouse Cinema with Jerry, and I was looking up, him and his family were there too, so we ended up sitting beside each other, and he saw how much of a little nerd I'm sitting there like a child, like every time like something that I know shows up. And then like getting up late, especially at 2 a.m. That's something I've started doing now for the shows I love. Getting up late every Tuesday and watching it as the episode dropped. We got so much in this, and I'm not going to spoil plot points, but I'm going to refer to certain things. If you haven't watched it and you intend doing so, we got live action Tron, we got the World Between Worlds, we got live action Anakin played by Hayden Christensen, but also the badass Anakin of the animated series, and not the kind of whiny emo prequel version. The best Anakin that we wanted, the Dave Filoni one. We got live action Clone Wars throwbacks. We got awesome new characters, like you said, Ray Stevenson's Bale Skull, amazing. We got the World Between Worlds. We got a shot of the Mortis gods. We got Sassy Huyang. We got zombie stormtroopers. We got Ezra fucking Bridger. We got iconic battles. We got Purgle's Chopper, loads of Hera, Jason Syndulla. The list goes on. And if you'd offered me half of that, or any Rebels fan, if you'd offered us half of that at the start of the series, we'd have bitten your hand off. The casting was spot on. Even bits that were slightly different, like character choices, like Ahsoka being less snips than we're used to seeing her, and more kind of somber, downbeat, and cautious. They made sense of that, and they explained that was an actual character choice. It's not just Rosario Dawson not understanding Ahsoka or anything like that. I don't care what anyone says. When I list all of that, Sabine picking up the Force a bit too quickly in the finale, that can't take all of that away. Okay. Yes, that was a bit where I'm like, I don't know about that. I don't know how they just managed to conjure up a lightsaber for Ezra. You can nitpick that stuff to death, but that, like, on balance of what we got is incredible. This was magical. I loved it, and it lived up to my stupidly high expectations. So I'm not going to find reasons to dislike something that does that. And I'm so glad that it made your top 5. Didn't even make my top 5. And this is how much of a geek I am about it. So incredible stuff. In at number 5 for me, again, something that you may have or may not, I had Loki season 2.
It is in my my top 5, but it's
a little bit higher.
Yeah, it's
okay.
It's a little bit higher.
We'll hold our fire then. Okay, so on to your number. That was your number 5. So on to your number 4.
It happens to be Loki season 2.
Amazing. Okay, go for it. You can go first. You're the guest. Go for it.
Man, does everything from this show was just like the aesthetics from the first episode of this season as well. How the sets were, the design, the kind of like the 70s and 80s aesthetic of what the future might look like, the way the TVA is, the colors. From that alone, I just adored this. And then the way the characters now as well, from going into season 1 and finishing season 2 and appreciating season 1 more because of it, because of how it is and how it ends. Yeah, it was just brilliant. I thought they handled Victor Timely and the situation with Jonathan Majors as well as they could, I think, as well. Especially after Quantumania as well. And you're kind of like, what is going to happen with this character now as well? Because I thought Kang was quite disappointing in Quantumania, I think, for that too. But yeah, just then, the new characters then, like OB, absolutely unreal. Yeah, just everything about this show just made me look forward to Wednesdays so much. Just to get to catch up with it. And it's such a well-written show. Tom Hiddleston as Loki as well just seems to just adore playing the character. Like, he is Loki. And yeah, it's just it's a show that's very obvious that every actor, I think, in it really gives a shit about the project and puts 110 into all the characters. Yeah, that's that for me is just it's a easy top 5 for me for the year.
Yeah, agree. And to me, like, it's, again, I adored this show, and now I'm like, I can't believe this is just number 5, and I love this show this much. And in a year where the press and the public have kind of been ready to the death of Marvel Studios, essentially, it hasn't actually been that bad. Like, look, sure, Quantumania was a little bit of a letdown. Secret Invasion may be the single most boring project Marvel has ever released.
And I was so excited for it, but it was just oh my god.
It was
and once again, a show that didn't even get into an honorable mention. It was that poor, like,
no, awful.
Yeah.
But on the flip side of that, we got the excellent Guardians 3 and the Marvels being way more fun than it had any right to be. So then you're kind of 2 for 2, and then you look at this. And this gives me hope, because what I didn't expect from Marvel now in phase 5 was a story like Loki to come along and grip me in the same way that so much a peak MCU phase 3 did. Having liked but not loved season 1, I think Eric Martin coming in as showrunner in place of Michael Waldron worked wonders for the show. He really understood that Loki works best as a kind of workplace comedy that messes with time, but doesn't allow itself to get too bogged down in it. Instead, time and all of that stuff is kind of a plot device used to help us focus on the characters we love and their motivations. Time essentially takes them out of kind of the necessity of the plot and lets us focus on what they're thinking and how they're feeling and what's affecting them. And that actually allows us to connect a lot better with them. So he gets the time. It's so many shows about time get caught up in the nitty gritty of it and trying to be credible and trying to get points with the internet. This doesn't. This is like, no, time should make us think about what the characters want and stuff like that as well. the addition of Ke Huy Quan as OB was absolutely inspired. And if they found a way to squeeze him into every Marvel project, I don't think I would ever fully dislike a Marvel project again. He is amazing. He's hilarious. And I just love anytime Quan shows up on my screen these days. He is nailing it. The show was so good that we didn't even mind, or at least I didn't mind or feel weird anytime Jonathan Majors was on screen, even though that they couldn't have possibly known what was to come when they wrote and then filmed this. So they were kind of stuck with what they got. They managed to give us just enough of him to make sense of where season 1 left off, because if they just ignored him, it just would have ruined the plot of the story as well. So we didn't want none of him because we needed the character, even if they, had to recast or anything. But it also, it didn't impact the project. And it somehow, again, this is just a total fluke. They left it perfectly so that the MCU, if they do just need to do a sidestep, they can just move on if they need to. And that's great as well. I'm very happy with that. I also really like the shift back to being focused on Tom Hiddleston. For a while, it seemed like season 1 was kind of doing what Hawkeye did, and I didn't mind when Hawkeye did it, but I didn't like it so much here, whereas Hawkeye was setting up a new Hawkeye, and they could still do that. Sylvie can still be around, but she is a B character, and they kind of positioned her the right way here. And I think focusing on the fact that this is a show called Loki, Hiddleston is our Loki. This is his ship. So letting him steer it was the right move. I thought the ending was phenomenal. It blew me away. I still think about it regularly. It sits in my mind and I love it so much the more I think about it. So emotional and perfect for a character as important as Loki. And even the likes of Mobius's ending as well was absolutely perfect too. They promised us that it would make sense in the end, and they did. They knew. And I love that, because the more they said it throughout, I'm like, this is the writers telling us we know this is good, and just like letting us go with it. Despite the sheer amount of timey-wimey bollocks they talked about throughout, it went right above my head. They made it work. They made it make sense. They nailed it. Give Eric Martin more projects, please. He gets it, and this was a huge win for Marvel exactly when they need it. Loki season 2, really liked it. So that was your number 4, which means it's time to jump on to my number 4, something that I'm surprised we haven't discussed. So I'm wondering if you've actually seen it or not, or if it might be on your list. Because I think you'll love it if you haven't seen it. I have. The reason I loved, similar to Ahsoka, I love getting up on my Tuesdays. I love getting up on Thursdays because of Loki and because of this show. Gen V is my number 4. Have you seen it, or is it on your list?
I've not seen it.
Okay. Are you a fan of The Boys?
I am. This is on my list to watch. I haven't gotten around to it yet.
Okay. I
But
won't spoil anything. Don't worry.
I'm interested to hear what you got to say about it, though, because I have heard very good things about it.
Yes. Is there any, first of all, just out of interest, was there any aversion when you heard about this project to watching this because you're a fan of The Boys? Because there was for me at the start. I'm just interested to see that, or was it just a time thing?
It was just legit just a time thing. And
Okay,
plus, I tend with Prime now. I've only after getting Prime like recently enough again. I tend to kind of just wait till a lot of stuff comes out, binge the fuck out of it, and then cancel my subscription again.
It's a type of streamer where you can't do that, because they do tend to operate in windows of being amazing, where it's like, okay, this is a December treat to myself, and then I'm not going to make it a recurring expense. That's fair enough.
That's exactly what it is.
I had aversions to The Boys, or to Gen V, because I love The Boys so much, and I was like, this just feels like it's going to be extra content. I was not expecting to love this even nearly as much as I did. Somehow, Craig Rosenberg, who kind of took the reins for this show, with kind of Eric Kripke and Seth Rogen and all the collaborators for The Boys, kind of working as producers as well. He managed to do the dream spin-off thing of capturing what we loved about the original while also giving it this completely unique vibe. They kind of riff off the X-Men, like it is kind of X-Men in The Boys universe. It's a school for, children who are soups. But they didn't actively make it an X-Men satire as well, which I didn't want it to be. And that's what I thought it would be. And I'm like, don't just rip the piss out of X-Men, like give it your own life. And they did. They gave it their own life. It felt like The Boys wrapped up inside a teen drama like Dawson's Creek or The OC, and And that bit of melodrama made it so campy and fun, while also keeping you really invested in the very real and very devastating stakes as well. From the time I finished the 3-episode premiere, they debuted a week before Loki. So again, I'm getting up on Thursday nights. I'm usually watching this, then Loki back to back. But the first week I just watched 3 episodes. And I usually hate when streamers do 3-episode premieres. I just think it's rude. It's a drain on your time, and it's a stress in a world where there's so much to watch. But I loved it. I watched it all in one sitting. And I was all in straight away. Like, the characters were instantly iconic. Lizzie Broadway's Emma is still my absolute fave, but then you've got Kate, Marie, Andre, Jordan, and Sam. They're all great too. They're imperfect and they're kind of morally ambiguous, but they're also just fucking kids, so there's allowed to be. You've also got some great new villains in the likes of Shetty and even the incredible Tech Knight, who only shows up for 1 episode, but I feel like he's going to be back because he was such a good, effective villain. The cameos and the mentions of the boys were perfect too. I won't give away anything, don't worry, but they were never really excessive or taking away from our characters. It never felt like they were trying to go, this episode doesn't really have enough, we'll just throw Billy Butcher in there. You know what I mean? They never did anything like that where it just felt like cheap or anything. And while there definitely should have been, like, I went into it and I'm like, there has to be at least one big cameo in there, and there was. When it arrived, it was so perfectly timed and executed that literally I got up and screamed. I'm like, yes, fucking yes. I won't tell you who, how, or when, but you will. I think you'll react the exact same. The series' biggest achievement, though, for me, was how it managed to completely invert how we saw the world they inhabit. Like, the motivations and of the villains in this are actually exactly the same motivations as the heroes in The Boys, yet it's told in such a way that it doesn't actually change how we feel about the boys at all. Like, it doesn't make you go, are the boys actually the bad guys? It doesn't do that. It's because you want the boys to still be the boys and tell their story in their own time. But actually, like, again, it just flips the kind of morality of it all. I think the biggest compliment is that I can give it, though, is when Dan and I discussed it, we both agreed we didn't want the two worlds to start blending. This is a treat unto itself, and this batch of characters have their own treats to offer, and I want them to get the time and space to do so itself. And I want a new series of The Boys 1 year, and I want Gen V another, so that I always have something of this quality to look to. And the fact that Gen V makes me not miss a show I love as much as The Boys, because it stands proudly alongside it for quality, is incredible. It's almost like how Better Call Saul, you didn't miss Breaking Bad when Better Call Saul was on, because essentially you were getting your Breaking Bad fix, but you're also getting something a little different too. And also the fact that after it ended, I was still able to get up on my Thursday nights. That only ended last week when the last episode of Invincible happened, and then Loki obviously had to end. But even with those amazing shows that I love still on, I still found myself longing for a new episode of Gen V. I miss it terribly. And that speaks volume to how much I enjoyed it, even with the latter two still on. Gen V, I cannot recommend it enough. I'm so jealous of you getting to binge it over Christmas. That is that is an awesome thing to have in your back pocket. Amazing.
And plus the fact that it's up above Ahsoka on your list as well, I'm like, shit, this must be amazing.
It's incredible. And I just didn't expect it. It just caught me so by surprise. The 3 episodes, I'm just like, holy fucking shit, we're back. Because I love The Boys. The Boys is always going to be like top 3, 4 of the year for me, no matter what. Like, and this is The Boys. They just did it as good as The Boys does it. It was incredible. Really, just an absolute treat. Now we're into the top 3, the business end. Okay, so in at number 3 for yourself.
This is a Netflix one that dropped. I completely forgot. It happens every Halloween with Mike Flanagan, where he drops a horror series on Netflix. But yeah, the Fall of the House of Usher, man.
Okay, just interesting. I love it.
I think I binged this in 2 sittings.
Nice.
And I watched them. I think I watched about 6 episodes in the last 2. I think it was like a Sunday where I was hungover to bits. Loved it. Absolutely adored this show. And I was kind of a bit worried when I went into it first, because I wasn't a crazy fan of Midnight Club, the one he brought out last year. It was okay. But this was just, and I think it's his last one that he's doing for Netflix now as well. But what a way till I just mic drop and walk off. Like, it's just the cast, the fact that he uses the same cast, kind of like American Horror Story a bit, where it's like an anthology kind of thing. So he'll use a lot of the same cast members. There's a nice familiarity there with them, but the way this story is told is just genius, in my opinion. The fact that everything is related as well to Edgar Allan Poe. Each story is kind of like a take on Edgar Allan Poe's short stories and stuff as well. It's just, it was such a fun horror show to watch, and that's the best way I can describe it. I haven't seen Succession, but I've been told it's similar-ish in terms of its vibe.
Yeah, very much so.
Because as soon as they put out the premise of this during, I think it was the first episode, where there's a mole in the family for the informant, and whoever finds out who the mole is gets the inheritance. I was just like, I'm fucking in. But Bruce Greenwood, though, as Roderick Strong, is just such a strong lead in this show. His presence on screen is just, it's phenomenal. The discussions he has with the detective in the room, in each episode as well, it's never boring, because he's just, you hang on every word I think he says. He's just such a brilliant piece of casting, I think, by Mike Flanagan, for him. But then just the likes of, like, as well, of Mary McDonnell as Madeline too, who's just a phenomenal actress as well. And then I love Rahul Kohli.
Yeah,
he plays Leo.
He was great. He was so good.
So good. Because like he was excellent in Midnight Mass as well, and then I just love seeing him pop back up in this as the kind of character he was. And it's fun as well, just seeing all these like fairly despicable characters get their comeuppance.
Yeah.
That's the fun part about this, because you're kind of like, okay, it's horror and it's gory, but at the same time, these are awful people, and you're kind of, it's forecast throughout the entire episode how each one of them are going to go, but it's just that's fun.
What I love too is, right, because one of the recurring characters that he has in every show is Henry Thomas, who is Elliot from E.T. I love the idea
Frederick.
I love the idea that Mike Flanagan saw that kid and was like, what a little prick. Because he's just the same dickhead in every one of his shows.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and he's so good at it. He's right. It is the right casting for him. But I'm like, how did you get that from Elliot? I'm like, amazing. Yes, I agree. And you've touched on a lot of the same points I want to touch on, so I won't double up. But when horror is done right, for me, it is probably my favorite genre of storytelling. But the problem is, it's so often done the wrong way these days, because people have learned the wrong lessons from horror films. They're like, they see kind of things that make us jump. So they're like, oh, we have to do jump scares. It's like, no, it's not the jump scare part. It's the psychological part, that we cared about the characters that made us jump. But again, like, people just take the easy route for the sake of putting out more content. But the one thing you can guarantee is with Mike Flanagan is that he does horror well, and he is like the Dave Filoni of horror, in that he kind of holds all the keys now. And you have even the likes of Stephen King and so many others that are just like, he's the guy now. He gets it. And again, like, he's just going to go on a whirlwind. He's a household name now, so his projects are getting mega books thrown at them. But what I really like about this is that it never feels excessive, but you see every penny on the screen. You know what I mean? It's never feeling like it's just, sometimes Netflix projects will just throw in explosions just for the sake of it, or they'll have like A-list cameos or stuff like that. This doesn't do any of that. It leaves every penny on the screen so that we can enjoy it. And again, like you said, the cast and kind of the fact he can go back to them, they get it. But he also has such a good eye for casting. Like Bruce Greenwood, who played Roderick Usher, is such a, he's a journeyman actor. You know what I mean? He's that guy from that thing in like so many mid-level TV shows, that he shouldn't have worked as well in this, but he absolutely cooked and made it gripping minute to minute. What I loved about this was, as well, they told you at the start what was going to happen. Like, this isn't a spoiler. If you haven't seen it, this is not a spoiler. It'll sound like a spoiler. I swear to God, it's not. The first episode, you're like, all my family died. And it's just like, they tell you, but that still kept you totally gripped. And at times, even like, there's people in it that you started to like, and you started to become hopeful that maybe it was wrong, but you know that it's not. But it's still tense, and it's still horrific, and it's still everything you want from a horror. He was just showing off at one stage. And this Halloween saw a lot of shit horror released. And essentially, I was so happy with this, because it not only gave me something new to love that's worth my time, but it revived my faith in the future of the genre with so much still to come from Flanagan. He has my money, whatever he does next. I love this. Fall of the House of Usher.
Absolutely.
And I have no problem, even though I had it at number 9, I have no problem with it making your top 3. It was one of those where I'm like, this could go anywhere on this list because I loved it too. It just, those are kind of the way it felt.
My absolute surprise as well of Mark Hamill showing up and throwing out an incredible performance too. Like, it's just, the cast are just so brilliant in this. This is what makes this show great, is the writing is fairly on point, but like the cast sell it so well. And they're just such a fun group of characters to kind of be around for those 8 episodes.
It's just in unison. And like you say, you bring up American Horror Story, and it's interesting because I do agree. It's very like early days American Horror Story, where you had like Jessica Lange, Evan Peters, Sarah Paulson. You had the heavy hitters and really talented actors involved, and they just got it. They were in sync with what the show was and what Ryan Murphy needed of them. That feels the case here. But what was interesting to me about it was this aired for me. I was watching this around the same time as the new American Horror Story season started, and that is dirt. That just feels like a dead show. But it was, in comparison to this, I'm like, sorry, Ryan, he took your lunch. I'm like, it's gone. Sorry, he's doing your thing, but he's doing it way better than you. And it was really interesting to see that. Love that show. Fall of the House of Usher. Great if you haven't watched it. Into number 3, obviously you've said there you didn't watch it, but it ties nicely together with this one, is Succession, because the Fall of the House of Usher is like Succession, but then it becomes a horror story. Succession season 4, obviously the final series, it obviously has an argument of being the defining show for our generation, and as much as we all would have loved more, it didn't disappoint with its final season, which thankfully landed the plane safely, which is what we're all worried about. And there are too many highlights to name. Look, I'm going to spoil, but like, again, it's not a spoiler. The show told you this was going to happen at the start. It's a show about succeeding. Logan Roy died. And that was obviously what made this series and like how that was going to look. Finally, they got to the succession part of the storyline. But again, we knew we were always going to get there. So it's no surprise that it happened in what was the final season. That was one of the most visceral TV experiences ever because of how real it was, how shocking and sudden it was, how everyone reacted as they learned. They did just a one-shotter. They just like kept the camera rolling. Now they did multiple one-shots of this, but they kept the camera rolling as everyone was kind of passing the phone around and kind of talking and reacting and stuff. And it just felt real. Like everyone obviously had a similar moment in their life, and they drew from that moment and they drew from the pain. And as much as this show is funny and interesting and the characters are so settled and they're spoiled little brats and dickheads for the most part, they just became humanized for a second and they just played really against type, which was really jarring and shocking to see. And it just made me bawl. And again, Logan Roy is not a good dude. He's like Roderick Usher. He's a dickhead corporate overlord, you know. And I'm like, why am I bawling my eyes out at this horrible monster dying? Like, but it's because everyone is just playing it so realistic, and it just felt like it just made us all think of those kind of moments that we're in, because we've all had them where we don't know what to say. We don't know. We're trying to say the right thing, but we're also in shock and we don't know what the fuck to say. And we're like, I want to say something, but I can't think of what to say. And it's just incredible. And like then you've got stuff like Shiv and Tom, you've got election night, you've got Roman trying to be Roman while also quietly mourning and falling apart. You've got Kendall stepping up. You've got a great turn by Alexander Skarsgård. You've got Cousin Greg being Cousin Greg, like the one time where he confessed to Logan that he had sex in his home. Again, not a plot spoiler, it's just a funny joke. Incredible stuff. Carl all of a sudden becoming a wisecracker, like when he turns around to Tom and he's like, I guess you're well and truly fucked. Amazing stuff. Like the only mild criticism, and again, I'm not saying there was anything wrong with this. It's my number 3 show and it's a top 10 that I love all of them. But just in comparison to my top 2 is that with those top 2, they flow as one kind of long story told with kind of peaks and valleys. This season, and I get it because it's the final one, felt like almost 10 standalone movies. That's a really good thing in one way because we wanted to get all of the Succession we could. It was great experiencing it, but in true Succession style, it felt kind of like The Simpsons, and that every episode felt like the world had blown up, but then the next episode they just kind of reset and started again from normal. And that's very Succession, and it is very satirical of corporate America, where again, people have like career-ending experiences, but again, if you're rich enough, it just bounces off you like Teflon. And that's a part of the satire of that Jesse Armstrong cultivates. But it just kind of lacks the depth and connection that you get with the stories in the top two. That did that as well. Having said that, to end on a positive for this, though, it stressed me out how much they had left to resolve in the finale. And I'm like, there's got to be a time jump. There's got to be this. There's got to be that. There's no way they can just wrap everything up in like one episode. And like, I think that's what they're telling us they're going to do. But like, there's no way. There's no way. And they just did it so smoothly, so calmly, so effortlessly, so perfectly, with a kind of ending that had kind of it was satisfying within the story, but also had that damning and true to life gut punch kind of way that, you know, these kind of stories about the elite corporate, like billionaires at work do. And that was an incredible feat to kind of round off an absolutely legendary series of television that never dipped, never had a bad moment, never had a bad series. The weakest part of Succession is the first 6 episodes, and then you get it, and then you're like, okay, this is an amazing show, and it just kept at a level of a 10 throughout. Absolutely incredible, the final series of Succession. A lot of people have it as number 1. I don't have a problem with that. Kev,
Yes.
Knowing you, knowing your tastes, knowing what you like, I think we've got the same 2 shows in our top 2.
I also think, yeah, because I was like, these 2 haven't been mentioned yet. They have to be both of our top 2s. Now, it depends on which one's number 1 and 2.
That's what I'm wondering. Okay, that's what I'm wondering. I feel like we may flip, but I feel like they're the same 2 shows, because I know what you love, and we've obviously discussed one as well. So let's do it. In at number 2 for you.
In at number 2 for me is The Bear.
Okay. The Bear is my number 1.
The
Bear season 2. Okay. So we'll discuss that then, and maybe we'll discuss my number 2 now. Yeah. Well, how we do it? Yeah. Okay. We'll discuss either way. Number 2, which I'm assuming is your number 1.
Yeah.
You could say it's your number 1. Go for it.
It's The Last of Us.
Yeah, what a fucking show! Which obviously we covered. It was the first show we covered here on page 180. You were obviously on this. We did at the 2 Kevs, Kev Metcalf again, Value and Bruiser as well, joined us to discuss it. Let's talk about The Last of Us. And again, I guess we can discuss The Bear, because we've never actually discussed this ourselves, whereas we have discussed Last of Us. So we'll go Last of Us and then The Bear. You're the guest. Go for it.
I was just kind of thinking back on The Last of Us as well, and every time I kind of just discuss that show with anybody, the one thing that everybody's kind of agreed on is the opening scene setting this absolutely terrifying tone. Yeah. And like, I still just think back to seeing that for the first time and getting like the hairs stand up on the back of my neck when it's this talk, or this interview from the 1970s talking about the science of it. And even though it's like Resident Evil style of like virus gets released, that like this is not going to happen, but there's a tiny chance it could. That's just absolutely genius for me. And I just still think about that opening episode a lot, kind of thinking back on it. But then you've just got like the Frank episode as well, which was just one of the most incredible pieces of TV I think this year. Only between it's that and there's a Bear episode which we'll discuss as well, which are the 2 greatest things that came out this year, in my opinion. They're absolute genius. But yeah, it's The Last of Us is that show that just never, and potentially some of it is just to do with how much I adore the game, and actually getting to discuss it every week with you and Kev as well, that maybe it's had more of a just a kind of a nostalgia kind of thing for me as well, of picking this as my number 1. But in terms of storytelling and character development and what they did with the story, yeah, it was an easy number 1 for me. It's just, and like, it's the show I'm most looking forward to having another season. Now I know the writer's strike and everything seems to delay that now until 2025. I think was the last thing I heard when the next season's going to be coming out.
Yeah.
And Pedro having an insanely busy schedule now, but yeah, just everything about this show, I just look back on it so fondly and just makes me want to watch it all over again now over Christmas. It's just a beautiful piece. And Neil Druckmann as well, and what's his name? Who's the other co-creator as well? Craig, yeah, just genius together. Absolutely brilliant. So it was so nice having, and this is something I discussed in The Last of Us, the episodes we did, compared to the Resident Evil films that have come out, and even like the newer ones as well, where they don't seem to be working in tandem with the actual game developers. It's just they just got sold the rights to it, and the director kind of has free reign to do whatever they want. Them working so closely together just does such wonders for the story, and doing it properly and doing it right. And the fact that it's a video game adaptation done properly is such a rare thing these days. I know Twisted Metal I've heard has been very, very well received as well as a really good fun show. But yeah, they got the drama right, they got the they got the casting right for the most part, according to me and you. And
so we actually reveal it here because we were discussing the potential. It was your idea. It was all you. Potential prank on. So for anyone who didn't listen to our Last of Us coverage, our other Last of Us fan who joined us for that was Other Kev. I don't want to call him Other Kev because he killed me. But Kev Metcalf, Ballymun Bruiser, joined it. He was not a fan of Tommy's casting. It was not his Tommy. He's very adamant about it. It became a thing. Do you want to talk about what your idea was to prank him?
Yeah, and I'm devastated I couldn't do this as well. So yeah, so on the podcast, if you listen to it, Kev did have very much a hashtag fuck Tommy thing go on every episode.
And not like have sex with him, fuck him, like fuck off. You can fuck off, like
yeah. But Gabriel Luna, Gabriel Luna, who plays the character of Tommy, he's filming something over here at the moment, and he was doing like a small signing in Forbidden Planet in town, and it didn't work out, unfortunately. That I was hoping to get in and get him to hold up a sign for the photo just saying "fuck you too, Kev." But then I'd have to go through the whole process of explaining. So
yeah, it may. We were talking about that. We're like, it may not actually work. Now you think about it. So my friend hates you, and
this will be really funny.
Not for you, because again, can't say this enough. Hates you. You should be out of work. Amazing. Yeah, great. I totally agree. Look, The Last of Us is my favorite video game ever. And I'm not going to say it's the reason we have page 180, because the idea of this show was running around my head for a good while, even before I actually officially finished Slow Blows. But The Last of Us debuting and needing to talk about it every week is what made me get the finger out and actually start this show at the start of this year. So this is what I wanted with it, and I was delighted to be able to do so with yourself and Kev as well. I had, similarly to Ahsoka, almost an unhealthy amount wrapped up in this emotionally. And with the cast I got, my expectations were almost so high that I expected to be disappointed, because there was no way this could be as good as I needed it to be. And not only did it vindicate me, it was best case scenario stuff, as it actually added to my appreciation of the source material. Like you talked there about the kind of the cold open where it was like, we lose. Amazing. And the absolute balls as well, by the way. Like they did a cold open in The Last of Us, which, if you know the video game, has probably the most iconic cold open of a video game there ever has been. And they didn't go with that. They said, no, we need to do a different cold open. What? Like, what are you doing? And instead they bulked it out for the whole first episode, which made way more sense. It worked way better because it got us properly attached to the characters involved, and then what happened ended up hitting so much harder. But then, like, the other cold open they did, like the extra scene where it's like, what do we need to do? Bomb. just saying the word bomb.
Yeah.
It was like, holy shit,
That was like
incredible,
episode 2, I think,
incredible
wasn't it? The
stuff.
cold open on that. Yeah.
Yeah, episode 2 or 3. I loved how they fleshed out the likes of Henry and Sam. Love how they accurately didn't make this just another zombie show. They gave us kind of additional characters that open up great moments from great actors like Melanie Linsky. I'm a Yellow Jackets fan, so I'm delighted to see her getting more work. But also in doing so, we still had some epic zombie moments, like the first kind of clicker scene. You had elements of kind of the stepping on the roots, waking up the other zombies, which I've never seen before. The zombie kiss at the end of episode 2, like absolutely just weird, mental, but like just so creative. And that's kind of the process of having Neil Druckmann, the creator, there to keep things like realistic, but Craig Mazin coming in with his own ideas on this could work, and Neil Druckmann being willing enough and flexible enough to be able to move away from some of his ideas and allow those new ideas just added so much to the show for super fans like myself who are watching out for specific things. But again, we want the show to give us those things, but also make us like it more and give us a reason to tune every week. They nailed that. The casting was incredible and like kind of a love letter to the games as well. Like the sheer emotion of hearing the voice of the original Ellie, Ashley Johnson, when she was cast as Ellie's mother, which was just perfect. Yep. Such a passing the torch moment, amazing. But you also had like OG Joel and Tommy getting roles as well. Like it is for gamers by gamers, this show, but it's also as good as any show on television. Pedro Pascal as well and Bella Ramsey not only brought Joel and Ellie to life, they gave them kind of newfound elements that we never thought about beforehand. Bella in particular was absolutely incredible in rounding out Ellie, who is one of the best developed video game characters in history. There's no more edges, but Bella found some anyway. Incredible, incredible stuff. I cannot wait to see what she does in season 2 and beyond, because there's a lot still to throw at her and there's a lot of room for it. And like just the excitement of Bella Ramsey gets to do that is just amazing. We had questions and nitpicks throughout, like at the time, and they still exist. Like the pacing for gamers felt a little bit off at time. Like I didn't hate turning Sam and Henry's story into a 2-parter and kind of bulking it up, but then we really wanted them to do the same with the likes of the David arc, because that's something that sticks in our brain almost more than Henry and Sam. Or the ending as well. The last episode felt very sudden as well. I remember us talking about that, and we were a bit disappointed when we looked at it. And it's like 38 minutes. What the fuck? Yeah. You've got so much to get to. It just throws you as a gamer, as these are kind of the moments that we hold dear. However, that's more one of those things where it's like we're not criticizing the show that we got. We're just saying we wanted more. You know what I mean? A couple of episodes more, and we would have, like, you know what I mean? It would have been absolutely perfect. But I haven't even mentioned myself. You talked about it, but I haven't even spoken about the highlight of the show for me. And this encompassed everything they got right about this. Obviously, episode 3, long time. And they kind of took a fun and interesting, but ultimately inconsequential. Like, if you think about things you like about The Last of Us, no one says Bill. You know what I mean? No one says that's the part that I love. But this is the episode everyone is talking about. And someone that gamers only know through a letter. Like, if you're a gamer, you never meet Frank in the game. You just get one letter and you can miss it. Like, you could never even know the story existed. Changing their story and blowing it up into this beautiful post-apocalyptic queer love story for the ages, powered by amazing performances by Nick Offerman and Murray Bartlett. It just showed it. Like, that's what I mean about this show, not only matching our high expectations, but bettering them and making it this show a massive value add to Last of Us fans. This was a home run, an absolute genuine pleasure to watch every week, and genuine pleasure to discuss with you and Kev Ella as well. Amazing. I'm going to rewatch it too, because they've got the remaster of The Last of Us Part 2 coming out in mid-January. So that's just an excuse, because I just want to rewatch it. But yeah, amazing. Loved it. It was my number 2. Your number 2 was The Bear season 2. So we'll get your thoughts on that. But again, 2 shows that we loved, and like, again, interchangeable. I could have had it any other way. It just depended on the day that I decided this list. That was where I felt, but I could have flipped it easily.
It was honestly like a very, very tough choice for me to pick 1 and 2. Because The Bear season 2, like, I loved the first season and was not expecting this season to be as good as it was. But this is like another show kind of like Ted Lasso for me a little bit, in terms of I just love spending time with these characters. They're just a joy to be around. But then like you got like I suppose the cameos that were in this season as well were phenomenal too. Like Will Poulter's episode I thought was great as well, and the fact that they can kind of focus on like someone like Marcus as well, doing like his culinary school then as well, as a side piece, but make it, you're really engaged with it, because you really just care about every single one of these characters. And what impresses me the most, I think, about this show is most of the episodes are only about half an hour long-ish, and how much it makes you care about every single one of these characters, and you're never bored if you're spending time with one character in particular. That's just, it just shows how tight the writing is. I think you mentioned before as well about like the trimming the fat, and just having like just quality over quantity episodes as well. And that's the reason why they're only about half an hour long-ish. I think each is just there's not a second kind of like wasted in these in the show. But yeah, it's the Christmas episode, man, is my favorite episode of television this year. It's just, it was the most stressful thing I watched this year, but it was just absolute genius from start to finish. Once again, the insane cameos that happened in the Christmas episode. You got Bob Odenkirk, you got John Mulaney, who else have you got? You've got
Jon Bernthal. He's recurring.
John, yeah.
You kind of got, this is the first time we got to see him in an episode, like fully. Sarah Paulson, Jamie Lee Curtis, Gillian Jacobs. Like, what the fuck?
Jamie Lee Curtis as well, given like one of her best performances ever as well.
Nailed it.
It was so tragic and just unhinged and just incredible. Like, yeah, and just the way that episode ends, I won't spoil it as well, but just such a sudden ending, I think, to that episode too. And then I don't know, just the character arc, I suppose, in that to the last episode too is brilliant. But on top of that episode, I think other standout episode for me is Rich's episode where he's becoming he's learning how to be like a proper waiter in that really fancy restaurant as well, and learning etiquette and going from cleaning knives and forks to just owning, and seeing the joy in him learning some of that stuff as well, and actually getting it and being like, oh, and it finally clicking with him, oh shit, this is how we run things. And like, I wear a suit now as well. It's just such a lovely line. Like, as well. And that from like to the Taylor Swift song as well. What a fucking moment in the car too. Like, it's just beautiful. It's such a beautiful, well-written show. And it's just a joy to watch every single week as well.
Yeah. I was so resistant to the idea of the bear at first, because so many people that I
thought it was a reality show at first.
yeah, actually, same.
When you see it on the Disney Plus screen, you're like, this is some fucking cooking reality.
It looks so real. Yeah, it's so authentic. Like, but like, so many people that I trusted said, no, fucking watch it, trust me. But I'm like, I'm not, like, because again, like, yeah, I'm not big into cooking shows. Like, I don't like Gordon Ramsay or anything like that. It's just not my bag. It's just not for me. I don't like shows that make me hungry. If I can't eat, like, and this does that, but I love it all the same. It's my number one show of 2023. But this year in the summer, I was like, you got to watch this. And if you don't catch up with season 2, you're going to be stuck in a hole and you're going to be miles behind. So just watch season 1. It's coming out on Disney then, season 2, and just watch it all together. Okay, fine. I did. I devoured it like in like a week. Okay. I'm not even kidding. I loved it. It is everything everyone says it is and more, including all of season 2, which I watched, I'm not messing, in one go after Barbenheimer. So I watched Oppenheimer, I watched Barbie, and then I'm like, well, I guess that's my media for the day consumed. No. I'm gonna have dinner, and I go, I'll watch the first episode of The Bear. I'll watch that. That'll be my little treat to myself. And then literally it was like, I guess I'm watching the next one. I guess I'm watching the next one. And then it's 2 a.m. And then I'm like, I watched that full series in one go. It is just so gripping and incredible and brilliant, intense, hilarious, authentic, character driven, likable. It is like Ted Lasso on crack. You know what I mean? It is like you love the characters and you love spending time with them, but it is so freaking intense too. It's like a nervous breakdown. The soundtrack is incredible as well. I have spent the months since watching it, just listening to certain songs on a loop, like REM, Strange Currencies, Radiohead, Let Down. Like amazing, like absolutely love it. I've never seen a show, and this just speaks to how good it is, but it doesn't sound like a compliment. I've never seen a show that legitimately traumatizes people who watch it, yet they speak about it like that's a good thing. Like a friend of mine, Sinead, can't watch multiple episodes back to back and has to pause sometimes because it straight up triggers her from the stress of of years working in restaurants. But this as well triggered me. It's not just if you're in restaurants, it's just relatable content. Like the Christmas episode, like you spoke of, Fishes, fucking incredible, but like triggering. You know what I mean? It's like I have been in that scene. I have walked on those eggshells. I have danced around those things. I have seen those family arguments erupt. I've tried to be the nice. I've tried to be every person in the scenario. I've tried to be the person. I've been Bernthal, who's like, no, do you know what? This person's a fucking dickhead, and I don't care for my family dinner. He doesn't get to be a fucking dickhead and ruin family dinner for everyone. So I'm gonna call him out on it. I've been John Mulaney and Sarah Paulson. Now everyone just calm down. I've been like who is like Jamie. I've never been Jamie Lee Curtis, but I've been around Jamie Lee Curtis, her character, and everyone's just like, that's just a crazy person, and we just let her be crazy every year this time because that's what we do at Christmas. It is so triggering for myself and so many other people, but so validating at the same time because you're like, other people go through this, and then you hear everyone else talking about it, and they're like, "Oh, that Christmas episode, that's great." And I'm like, "Is this just what Christmas is, and why do we celebrate it?" But like, it was such good television. It felt real. I'm literally watching it, digging my like hands into the couch as I'm watching it because I'm so fucking tense and intense, and I'm just emotionally drawn in, and I'm just like remembering past traumas that I'd repressed. It's just, it does all of that to you, but then it just makes you laugh like in the next second, you know what I mean? And then to have that episode, and you've said the same, to follow that up with Forks, which is the character-centric episode that in 35 minutes takes this complex character of Richie, who he's an asshole. Like, there's not much to him. He's just an asshole. But you kind of like him. Like, he's funny. You see why John Bernthal hung around with him. Like, you'd have a drink with him, you know, but just one, you know, and you just listen to his jokes, and then he starts to get drunk and you're like, I guess it's time to go home. And you take that, you know, we all know a Richie, but they just changed everything about that we thought about him, and it was showing off. And it was like, you generally, I watch Fishes and I'm like, that's the best episode of television I'm going to see this year. That's incredible. And then I'm like, I don't know if that was the best episode of television that I've watched in the past 2 hours. And then like, I'm like, this show is just showing off with the people that it got. It, like the cast, we spoke about the kind of guest stars it gets, is Will Poulter, and like the cameos it gets, and it just speaks to how good it is because it's not a big budget show. But it's just like, they obviously, these actors are calling their agents going, get me on The Bear. I fucking love that show. But on top of that, then it has just this amazing cast and gifts that they've given us, and the likes of, now this isn't their first project, but it's the first time they've got to be this level of an actor and show us what they can do in this way. Jeremy Allen White, obviously, as Carmy. You've got Ayo Edebiri as Sydney. You've got Ebon Boss-Bacharach as Richie. By the way, as well, if you like The Bear and you like that kind of humor and that naturalistic way of talking, if you haven't seen it already, I think you need to go see the new kind of Ayo Edebiri comedy. I'm struggling to think of it now. It's absolutely incredible though. but it really captures her like the bear kind of humor that it has as well. It's brilliant. Even the minor characters have me fully bought in though. Like the arcs that they had where they sent Tina and Ibra on this going back to school mission and stuff like that. Like when Tina walked into the karaoke bar and all of a sudden this really like kind of spicy, like mouthy Latina was all of a sudden vulnerable and just want to have friends. I'm like, Tina, I just want to hug you through the screen. When Ibra was getting vulnerable because he realized there was a lot that he didn't know, and he's old, so he's not used to learning. Oh my fucking god. Like my heart is just like, I want to like literally grab the screen and hug these people.
They're so relatable
into them. Yes, they're just real. They're just real. And then you look into the production story that this has, right? Because you look at the list, and I think this is why it made my number one, right? The Last of Us is amazing, but it was set up to succeed. Look at the cast, look at the budget, look at the fan base that they're building on. It's on HBO, it's on Sunday nights, it's going to get a huge marketing budget. Succession, Gen V coming off the back of the boys. Loki is in the MCU. Beef has the Netflix machine behind it. Ahsoka, Star Wars, Big Brother, obviously a huge IP. The Fall of House of Usher, Netflix again, Always Sunny is on a 16 series. All of these are set up to succeed. The Bear isn't, okay? The Bear is a small but growing quickly show made on a shoestring budget, on a tight budget and production window. Essentially, they're just like, here, like this was a show that the creator had, Christopher Storer had kicking around in his head that he wanted to tell about a time he'd spent working in a similar restaurant, okay? And essentially they're like, here, we'll do that fucking script of yours, but like, can you make it in 6 weeks? And he's like, sure, yeah, I'll make it in 6 weeks. It's grand, don't worry about it. And then he did it, and that was season 1. And then all of a sudden they're just like, yeah, actually, we have a window open in the summer. Can you do another one? Really short notice. And he's like, yeah, I can do another one, not a bother. And then he goes out and makes it, and he makes it the best. And it's a simple show about running a restaurant, but somehow it's the best show on television. But not only that, look at the story it told. Season 1, if you got into season 1, okay, you really liked it because you liked the character stuff and everything else in it is great, but the core of the show was like set in this restaurant and all the drama's happening while they're preparing meals, and the restaurant's really busy and it's stressful and stuff like that. And that's the default show. This show at the end of season 1 moved away from that by saying, we're not going to have any of that until the last episode. We're not going to have any of them working in it's a show about working in a restaurant where they can't work in a restaurant in season 2. And it's fucking incredible. They put obstacles up against this show and it delivers the best show on television. In fucking credible. And I was unsure if it was my number one going in. I'm fucking sure of it talking about it. I love this show. I'm gonna go back and rewatch it. I'm gonna rewatch the Christmas episode on Christmas Day just to feel validated. I'm like, well, I'm not the only one having a shit Christmas.
Yeah,
incredible.
That is something that, like, because those characters in that particular episode, I think, is so relatable to people as well. It's so important because you kind of feel like in those situations, fuck, I'm so alone in this, but it's something that like really brings you together with everyone, because you're like, oh, I'm feeling really alone right now, but it's a weird thing of because everyone has this going on as well, you don't feel as alone anymore. And it's a beautiful thing. I also got to mention it as well, cousin Fak as well is just fucking great every time he's on screen. Even the Christmas episode, especially, him and the brother were just absolutely unreal as these, like, amazing. They're the comedy aspect parts of that episode that you really need, I think, is up. But most episodes, Fak is just brilliant. And then when he gets his suit then as well is just beautiful. I love it because we're suit guys now.
and what I loved as well about the Christmas episode was, right, because you've got little things like Carmy is an intriguing lead character, but you never fully understand them. You're like, why you standoffish? Why you like this? Why did you have to go? Why? There's so many questions around Carmy, and you just think that's just who he is. They're never going to explain it. And in one episode of television, you're like, he's codependent. He became a caregiver for his mother, which means that he sacrifices his own happiness for others. This is why he became a chef, because he wanted to make food for other people to keep everyone else happy. He's the one person in his life who will constantly go out of his way and sacrifice his Christmas to make sure everyone else has a good Christmas. But the reason he does that is because he has this high pressure mother who he just wants to be loved by and keep happy and stuff like that as well. And then that obviously sets into motion the way that it kind of where it ends up and how his character plays out. Like, and it's like, you've just answered every question. And then they do the same for Richie in the next episode. And then they do the same for Sydney in the next episode. Like, it's just like, this show is just, it is beautiful. It is perfect. If you haven't watched The Bear, I know it sounds like we've discussed it a lot. Experience it. We haven't even tipped the iceberg for how good this is. It is a monster of a show, and I can't wait for season 3. It is fantastic. Best show on television. I'm very confident in saying that now. But Kev, I've really enjoyed this conversation. This is the reason why I've been trying to get you back all year. So let's not leave it so long until we have another conversation. But an absolute pleasure. Go ahead.
I do have one question before we go.
Okay.
I know we've been going on a long time. This is the discussion we had at work.
Okay.
And it was only that I watched the Muppets Christmas Carol yesterday in the cinema, and I was like, I should ask JR about this. So if you could recast any movie with the Muppets, but you have to keep one human character in it as well, what movie would it be?
Ooh. Okay, I got it.
Okay, go on.
Die Hard, but I'm keeping Alan Rickman.
Wow, mine is Die Hard as well.
This is why we're friends. Was Alan Rickman the person you kept?
No, I'm keeping Bruce. Miss Piggy and Bruce is just fucking genius to me. Like,
but he's not selling it. He's not like into it. He's not acting. Like, you can't make Bruce Willis act. Bruce Willis is what the fuck he wants on camera. So like, he's just like, I don't know why I'm kissing a pig. And it's like, Bruce, that's not read the script. Who's Alan? Who's snorting coke off the office desk?
Oh, that's Fozzie Bear. He's a kind of Joker kind of guy.
Bobby, I got you.
And then we had Gonzo as Hans Gruber that as well.
Okay, yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I can't believe we both picked Die Hard. We had the entire of movie history to pick from, and we went to Die Hard. Incredible.
Love it.
We can't top that. But we will try again. We're going to have you back on. Fantastic Amazing. Stuff as always. Love that top 10. Guys, follow Kev on social media, Kev Fan Club, if you haven't already. Check out Fan Club as well, and everything that they do. Seriously talented band. You can get all their stuff, a lot of their stuff on Spotify. Really recommend it. Kev, thanks for joining us on page 180, and we'll chat soon.
Thank you very much, man. Talk soon.